Leo, what are the, call it, top 3 things that a company should be doing pre-launch to be successful on Product Hunt?
So the first thing that Thomas already mentioned is you want to make sure that you get your assets in order and that you really nail your messaging, and ideally test that and verify that with like a few users going through it. You as the founder, like you're doing like product work all day, every day. And sometimes you're like, well, the value proposition of my product is so clear, obviously everyone should understand, but you want to have tested and verified this with like a few other users that they also look at this and they're like, okay, I get it instantly and fall in love with it. Second thing, you want to make sure to like warm up your audience if you have one as much as possible. If not, then that's essentially what we do. Like you want to build up your audience. So for Thomas, like he's been doing this by like posting on Twitter, posting on LinkedIn, posting in Hacker News, like warming up all of this like personal connections via email. And that's super helpful. And the third thing that you want to do is that on launch day, you really set some time aside. You don't have to do 24 hours like Thomas did, but you want to set some time aside to like be able to engage with the community. So like really in advance to your launch day, clear your calendar, make sure that you have 1 to 2 team members that can jump into the comments and really be helpful and engage with the community, because the more you do that, the more people are willing to like jump into the discussion and ask questions because they see that there's really engaged founders behind the product.
So today we're talking about Product Hunt and launching on Product Hunt. Now, general collaboration is going to be launching on Product Hunt. And as I'm prepping for launch and trying to learn as much as I can, I figured why keep those conversations I'm having to myself. So we've got 2 awesome guests for today. We have Leo and his marketing agency, Social Growth Labs. They specialize in helping early stage startups like mine find their first 1,000 users by launching on Product Hunt. And then we have Tomás, who's founder of Not Diamond. Super cool app, takes the guesswork out of picking AI models. I want to hear more from the horse's mouth on how exactly that works because it sounds super cool. But most importantly, Social Growth Labs just helped Not Diamond earn 600 plus upvotes and won product of the day when they launched a few weeks ago. So excited to have both of you guys on. This is going to be a really fun conversation, just diving into the weeds of how the hell did you guys do it? It's a pretty cool accomplishment. I know, Leo, you kind of do this all day, every day, but Tomás, this was, if you're like me, this is a big deal. Maybe to start, like Tomás, how did it feel getting first? Was that what your goal was? What were you guys looking for in your Product Hunt launch?
It felt great and exhausting. I was like totally destroyed by the end of that day. And, but yeah, it was like at the edge of my seat all day and so happy that we hit first. I think, I had so many people reaching out to me saying like, hey, I saw you hit first on Product Hunt. And I think, it was just really impressive how much visibility and attention that it brought. So it I think was, just really awesome to work on this with Leo and super happy with how it turned out.
What were you aiming for? Like when you and Leo met, I know when I met Leo for the first time, I think his first question was like, what is your goal? Was it visibility? Was it getting number 1? Was it installs? What was your mindset going in?
So I wouldn't say this is the only right way to approach Product Hunt, but my mindset was we should really hit number 1. And I think the point for us with doing this launch on Product Hunt was for kind of branding and community validation and trust. I think when I see that somebody has hit number 1 or number 2 or number 3 on Product Hunt, it gives me a lot of confidence that there's like a real product behind the landing page. But I think I didn't count on how much visibility it also brought us, which was a really nice surprise.
Leo, I feel lucky that I stumbled into you. You have very little online presence. I think I read a Lenny's List article that mentioned you, mentioned your firm. And Tomás, I want to hear how you came across him. But you've got a really unique model. So maybe to start, tell us, how did you start doing what you're doing? And then tell us specifically, like, how does your agency work? Because it's pretty unique.
Yeah, great question. So in the past, we helped early stage startups with their general go-to-market strategy. So we had a team of people that were specialized in PR and SEO and large-scale PPC campaigns, so performance-based marketing. And we offered everything under the sun, and we realized that was really hard to scale when you help startups with like anything from like early stage PR, like so essentially getting their first TechCrunch article out, to like later stage SEO and optimizing for like conversion rate optimization on their website. And we kept getting like requests to help people with their initial launches on, let's say, Hacker News, on Reddit, on Product Hunt. And we started having some really good success on Product Hunt launches specifically. And we figured out, instead of just continuing to offer like all the different services under the sun that fall into the go-to-market strategy bucket, we would just hone in on our offer with Product Hunt. And so what we did in the beginning, because so we have a team that specializes in SEO and then PR, right? But I personally come from a PPC, performance marketing background. So in the past, when we would run large-scale campaigns for clients, we would charge like profit of the campaigns that we generated, right? Because I really believe in the model of performance-based work. And so when we started offering Product Hunt services, we're like, okay, we can help startups launch on Product Hunt against like a flat fee. And if they place, they place. And if they don't place, they don't place. But that kind of didn't really sit well with me. So what we came up with was a performance-based model where we'll help our clients to get them into the top 3 spots on Product Hunt. And if you're happening to place in the top 4th spot or anything lower, then essentially our service remains entirely free of charge. So that's how our model works.
It's almost, I think I told you this when we last caught up. It's kind of too good to be true. And it's for a founder like Tomás or a founder like me, that's you want that exposure, you want that number 1 spot, or at least to be top 3. And that's incredible that you're that confident that you're able to do that. So maybe that's a place to dig in to start. How do you get confident? Like what makes, maybe flipping the question as I ask it, what makes a startup, what makes a product a good fit for Product Hunt? What made Not Diamond a company that you were excited to work for? What makes General Collaboration a company that you're excited to work with?
Yeah, great question. So as you might have guessed, there is a lot of risk on our end with our performance-based model. So we have a pretty rigorous, rigorous lead pre-qualification process in place where, first of all, before we even either reach out to clients or when clients book or prospects book a call with us, we take a look at their website. And for us, the main thing is like we want to make sure that it's actually a product where your ICP are the type of people that hang out in Product Hunt. Because if you're launching, like, let's say, a B2B enterprise solution, some of which we've worked with them before, but you're not going to have a ton of like overlap with the people that come to Product Hunt. Most of those people are product managers, product marketers, developers, early stage founders, VCs, tech bloggers, and they work in either early stage startups or sometimes scale ups, but they don't really work in the enterprise level. So first thing that we pay attention to is like, hey, what's your product? What's your value proposition? Can I or can the rest of our team understand your value proposition in 10 seconds or less when we take a look at your site? Because the Product Hunt crowd, just like many people on social media nowadays, they have pretty short attention spans. So you want to make sure that it's not like a convoluted messaging. It's a pretty crisp and clean landing page that your value proposition overlaps with like the people that are on Product Hunt. We only work with PLG products, so nothing that is either SLG, like sales led, where people have to book a demo, or waitlist. We don't work with waitlisted products either. We've done some collaborations in the past where startups would still be in waitlist format, but when I had a call with them or the rest of our team spoke to them, they essentially were willing to agree to remove the waitlist just for their Product Hunt campaign, and essentially create a separate landing page. And yeah, that's essentially what we've done on Product Hunt. And yeah.
Cool. What made you feel like excited and like Product Hunt was a good fit for you with Not Diamond, Tomás?
Well, I'll say actually, so Product Hunt was part of a broader strategy, and we almost kind of, part of the reason I was excited to work with Leo was because he has such an incredible track record, but also because we were running so many other parts of our strategy. And so it's kind of like a nice to have, like, okay, if we really nail it on Product Hunt, that's awesome. And then, like I said, it was kind of like a surprise just how big of a channel for visibility and growth and user traction that it's ended up being. So honestly, it was kind of like this broader part of a broader portfolio. But it's been, I'm super grateful that we included it in that. And then, we'll let Leo, share what he saw and what we were building that got us past his rigorous standards. Yeah.
So actually just while you were talking, I pulled up our call notes from when we had our chat, which was now like 2 months ago. And so we always ask like the same questions, right? Like we try to figure out like, where's your product at? What have you guys tried in the past so far? And like, what are your goals? Because in the end of the day, doing a product hunt campaign just for like vanity metrics, yes, like I always get in calls with founders and I'm trying to figure out like, hey, why is it that they want to do a product hunt campaign? If it's just for like the credibility, if they have like funding talks coming up, yes, it could make sense. But for you guys, actually, I've taken notes here that for you, the most important thing was like relevant traffic from developers that are building like LLM powered products. And that's actually like what attracted me to look at your product in more detail as well. So ever since ChatGPT was released like a few years ago, AI has been like booming on product hunts, so much so that they have actually created its own category. So because there's so many AI related products launching, they now have their own categories so that it doesn't drown out the rest of the products. And for you guys, your product was super relevant because there's so many developers and also indie developers on Product Hunt that are constantly checking out like, hey, what products could help them make their workflows more efficient, more streamlined. And that's essentially what you guys do by helping developers pick the right LLM model based on the task that they're trying to accomplish.
So, Tomás, you had mentioned that this was one piece of a broad strategy. I'd love to hear more about that. We're trying to take a similar approach with general collaboration, and there's a lot of moving parts. I'd love to hear like what was this? I assume it was this larger launch moment for you all, or what did it all look like as a complete whole?
Yeah, so I think one piece was we gave ourselves time to really take the launch seriously. I think that one important part of the launch is the product, and there was a lot of work that went into the product. But then we also put a lot of work just into how we actually wanted to bring this out into the world. So that included press. We had our articles coming out about us. We also had newsletters. And then had a number of Twitter posts that like we kind of had been preparing for. We had like let our investors know that we were going to be kind of putting out these posts so that they could help amplify them. There was also, we posted on Hacker News within community Slacks. And then we also ran a pretty like well-structured email kind of outreach to our own network. So we just kind of like had all of these emails ready ahead of time to all of our friends, our collaborators, our advisors, other people in our network. And so all of those things together, I think were kind of like plus the product hunt kind of came together into this broader strategy.
Was this like, were you working on that strategy and then product hunt was something that you layered on top, or was this something that I know Leo shared a lot of docs with me as far as like what are his best practices for additional activities that a founder can do, that a company can do to support a product hunt launch? Some of those that you shared were definitely on that list. Some of those were new. It sounded like they were completely independent things that you were doing.
Yeah, I'd say product hunt was one of the core strategies. I think we felt pretty confident that Twitter or X was going to be a really big kind of channel for visibility. We also felt a lot of confidence that kind of very direct, warm outreach to people in our network was going to really help amplify this. I think also just people underappreciate how much one upvote on Product Hunt or one like or reshare really impacts a launch, especially in the beginning, just because it helps build this momentum that then takes you either into other people's feeds or onto the top of Product Hunt or et cetera. And then, I think Product Hunt was another one of these core strategies. We also, tried to get Hacker News right. Didn't end up on the front page. That was the one strategy that we weren't able to crack. But I think that's also why it was really valuable to have multiple strategies.
Were these all like singular? I get that like the drip campaign that you mentioned before over email was probably building towards this, but was like Hacker News, Product Hunt, the X push, was that all like same day? What was it, August 1st? Is that right? Or so were these like spread out over a week or or something?
We tried to spread out over a week. So we launched our API and announced our raise on Tuesday, on July 30th. And then on the 31st, there were a number of other kind of developers who had built things on top of our API. They launched those, and we kind of dove in and helped amplify those projects. And then on August 1st, we launched the chatbot on Product Hunt, and then really tried to. Our goal was to basically be hitting people's feeds almost every day of that week. And I think it's easy to kind of like see something and be like, okay, yeah, that's like one of 20. But then you see it again the next day and again the next day. And you're like, I should really look at this. And that's actually what, I ran into a friend last week and he was like, congrats, man. That was like blowing up all my feeds. And I think that was exactly what I wanted to hear. He was seeing it like everywhere he went, on Product Hunt, on, our different Slack communities, Reddit, Twitter. And that was really the goal.
Interesting. So I've been taking this approach of like, I'm kind of throwing it all behind Leo and throwing it all like, okay, we're going to have this one big launch moment. I'm going to have all my social posts go up on this day. I'm going to have all my emails that I'm sending out geared towards getting more upvotes and basically trying to make it this like one big loud event. It's interesting to hear that you spread it out over a week like that. Sounds like there's a lot of benefit to the way that you did it. What did it start with Product Hunt, or where did Product Hunt fall in the, I don't know, I guess that overall time frame of that week?
Yeah, so Product Hunt, launched the API and announced the raise on Tuesday, and then Product Hunt was 2 days after that. And so it was kind of like this, yeah.
When you did that announcement, was that like you had a PR embargo and like press hit then, or what was the punch there to start it?
We did press on Tuesday, yeah. So we had an exclusive, and then posted on Twitter. That got picked up by all of our investors and community, and then on Thursday, so 2 days later, we launched this follow-up kind of launch, almost like it was sort of this unexpected thing where suddenly now you have this other great experience on top of the API. You have this chat experience as well. And we wanted to launch that on Product Hunt in particular because it's much more consumer facing, even though I think developer tools can do well on Product Hunt. As Leo was saying, this has a much broader appeal. And I think that the goal when we were putting together this, like scheduling out our week and wanting to try to get into folks' attention every day, I think we wanted to have a different story every day. And that was kind of the goal. And, so yeah. But I also think like, going out like all in one day is really, great as well. I'd say, generally I would kind of discourage like trying to tell the same story over multiple days. Like you do press on one day and Twitter on a different day and Product Hunt on a different day. But if you can tell different stories on each day of the week, like, oh, here's how this developer built this on top of what we're building, and this is how this company used it. And then, that's like a different story. And if you can kind of push out a different story like that every day, then I think that becomes really powerful for convincing people to take a look at it, which is really like the really challenging thing. Just like, is that worth even spending 5 seconds on? And sometimes by the third hit, they're willing to take a look.
Leo, I'd love to get your take on this, like especially now knowing I didn't know that Social Growth Labs had started with being more of a full service shop and then focusing in. So I'm sure you've got a lot of opinions on all these other marketing moments that you can have around a product launch. What do you think is best practice when you think of your clients and because maybe focusing on that objective of, we don't want the vanity metric. We want to see that we're getting users, we're getting really impactful attention. What have you seen work really well? What have you seen work not so well? Like, are there any like stand out, you got to do this? And are there any stand out, like, absolutely do not do this?
Yeah. I honestly think like the way Thomas described his experience, like, I mean, they crushed it. They did super, super well. And what I think more than anything was like the key aspect here was that they had like an omni-channel strategy in place. We've often been asked by our clients where that actually helps, like having like a TechCrunch article go out the day before Product Hunt and then like another announcement go out the day after Product Hunt. We haven't seen that there's a lot of like overlap between those channels. More so, if you are someone who checks out TechCrunch, you might also be someone, yes, who checks out Product Hunt. And just like Thomas mentioned, if you're able to see like the same product over and over on different platforms, like that's super helpful. But it's not going to have a negative impact or a positive impact on your Product Hunt campaign. Like let's say if you have TechCrunch going out the day before, and before that you had like another funding announcement on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and then you do Product Hunt on the third day, it's not like that those other platforms would give you like an additional boost. Usually those are like separate things, but the same users might have seen them already before. So that really just cements like you being top of mind for that particular user. So when we work with clients and they have announcements going out, we typically recommend like, hey, do it on different days just so that you can build up momentum. Whether you do it all on the same day, like there's not necessarily an added benefit to it.
I'd love to get into the tactics and hear from both of you on this of what are the things that you did and how early did you start? It sounded like y'all engaged with each other about a month before the Product Hunt launch. Tomás, were you working on this? Was that around when you started working on this launch moment in general, or was your team working even further in advance than that?
Yeah, I think that's when we really started kind of putting the launch strategy into kind of concrete actions. And so we had been kind of building in beta and then started thinking ahead, 1-2 months ahead of launch to really prepare ourselves for where we wanted to be with the product, and then also where we wanted to be like in terms of our locked and loaded launch tactics.
And then you've shared a lot of the different channels that you all used. It seems relatively obvious why those channels were a good fit. What did you not use? Like, what are the channels that you've considered and that said, no, not a fit for us, not right now?
I don't know. I mean, I guess Reddit.
You did it all?
Like, we posted a few things on Reddit and, but we invested more or less in some platforms than others. Didn't launch on TikTok. I think we mostly focus on where does our ICP spend time. And so that is, Twitter, LinkedIn, Product Hunt, Ben's Bytes newsletters, Hacker News, etc. So that's kind of where we focused. And I think we, generally, again, tried to take a pretty broad approach here. And that took time. I think I see a lot of people who kind of like launch in a pretty haphazard way and underestimate how much time and preparation it can take to really like nail a launch. And so I think we kind of from the outset forced ourselves to invest more in it than we thought we might need to.
Where do you think you spent the most time? Like if I'm thinking of how I've been spending my time so far, it's been on the language, the positioning, getting that message really specific. And is that the same for you all? Where have you been spending time? And then Leo, I'd love to hear from you as well. Where do you recommend companies spend most time? Where did you spend the most time with companies?
Yeah, I'll say for myself, that was actually when you asked that was the first thought that came to my mind. It's like the actual language and the language across each of these different platforms. I mean, like the tweet thread, like the Product Hunt thing, they're saying similar content, but they're framed differently. There's a slightly different tone of voice. And I think really seeing it all through the lens of storytelling. How do I tell a story that is as compelling as possible, as quickly as possible, and that also doesn't feel artificial? Because so much of what I read when I am reading different kinds of launches just feel very cut and dry or formulaic. And so how can I look for opportunities to break formulas, be authentic, and still be super, super intelligible to a reader in a very short amount of time? And that was really, it took a lot of, iteration and writing and rewriting and getting input. And and I think it's very hard, especially as someone who's building the product, to then step into the mindset of somebody who like needs to feel like why this is so important or worthwhile in 5 or 10 seconds. And so that took a lot of time to just like occupy that position.
Was there anywhere, thinking back, that you mentioned there that sounds like you kind of tried to zig where others zagged? Like where did you really differentiate your messaging? Was there any sort of like light bulb moment or breakthrough with how you described the product?
So I think a lot of it was like subtle. Sometimes it was like, just explicit. Like I explicitly didn't use any emojis in my like tweet launch. And then I like wrote that at the bottom as like a nota bene that we avoided any emojis. I think with Product Hunt, it was probably a little more tried and true, just because I personally am newer to that platform, and so was harder for me to tell without context, where to follow best practices and where to build upon them. And so I had just basically looked back through all of the top launches of like the past few weeks and everything that they had, written and how they had framed their video demos. And I took what I liked and I kind of left the rest. And but yeah, I think generally as a general principle, I think just looking for opportunities to break the kind of marketing formula of communication helps build trust. And a lot of that can also happen in the back and forth. I think that's one piece of feedback I've gotten from a lot of people who've engaged in the launch is like how responsive I've been over all of these platforms. So on Product Hunt, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, I remember somebody wrote a message on Product Hunt about something that they had some question about that they said wasn't working, and so I recorded a quick Loom video to say, "Hey, looks like it is working for me. Can you tell me more about what your browser is?" And then he was like, "Oh yeah, actually it is working for me. I made a mistake." But that kind of like very, very active, involved feedback, I think, was also helped me be a human being and not like a marketing campaign.
Leo, I'd love to get your reaction to that. Specifically that idea of like, in my shoes and Tomás's shoes, we want to stand out, want to be different. But at the same time, you have a business that is based on, this is formulaic. You know how to win, product of the day, every single day of the week. So there's, I'm sure, some room where like you're doing the same things because you know that this is going to work, but also you do need to differentiate. How do you approach things? What's your specific approach that allows you to be that repeatedly successful?
So I honestly loved hearing Thomas's experience. Also, like, shout out to Thomas, because on the launch day itself, I think you pulled like an all-nighter, or like almost an all-nighter, because I saw him like replying to comments and like being super engaged with the community, like from like 3 a.m. Pacific time all the way to like 11 p.m. Pacific time. So like launch days are definitely long and exhausting. And just like Thomas mentioned already, like at the end of it, he was just like straight up drained. And we don't require that from any of our clients to be that engaged, but it certainly helps when they are. So that's, I also think, a big contributing factor why Not Diamond made it to the top 1 spot on the launch day. Because Thomas was like super engaged, because he was constantly helping out users. And like, I mean, shooting a Loom video to like a comment on a social media post, that's going above and beyond, right? So again, like, congrats and shout out to Thomas for taking the time to doing that. We continuously pay attention to like what does well on Product Hunt over like a quarter-to-quarter basis, because yes, there is a formulaic approach to it, like what has been doing well over the past 4 years, but then there are also like changes in seasons and like ebbs and flows, where now that there are so many AI products to it, like you really want to make sure that you do try to do your best to have like a pattern interrupt and like stand out from the rest of the crowd of the AI products. So I'd say there is like a general formula that we try to follow, like where it's like our checklist, like, hey, you want to make sure that you have A, B, C, D, E, all sorted and done at least a week before you guys go live. But then if you are like an AI product that's launched in the wake of like 300 similar AI products over the past like 60 days, I think it's super helpful, like how Thomas has done it, that he actually took the time to look at the launches from the past 30 days, seen how they framed their positioning, and then try to like have like a slight deviation in it in order to stand out from the crowd. And again, like what's important to keep in mind is like if you launch on Product Hunt and someone comes to the homepage, the only thing that they see about your product is literally like your logo and your tagline. And the tagline is like literally the most important asset that you can work on in order to make sure that you increase the conversion rate from the Product Hunt homepage to your launch page itself. And that's where it's super helpful to just have something that's clear and concise, but also doesn't like follow the route of like 100 other startups that have launched before you.
When it comes to writing that tagline or positioning the product in general, like hearing that Not Diamond focused specifically on this one direct-to-consumer use case versus talking about like the entirety of what the company does, I think that's really interesting. One of the things that I've been wrestling with at General Collaboration is that do we sell the product that exists today, or do we point to the grander vision, and how much do we point to that vision? We are talking about like an early adopter audience that we're hoping is going to nerd out on this stuff with us and be just as excited about what we're building as we are. Where do you recommend people draw that line, Leo?
I always recommend that it really depends on like where you guys are in your roadmap. So for you guys, like I honestly think like your grander vision is like super exciting. And if you are already building to that in the sense that you could achieve a big part of that grander vision in the next quarter or in the next 2 quarters, then I think it's always helpful to like use a tagline that considers the greater vision or like speaks to the greater vision itself. And because Product Hunt users, they're all like tech enthusiasts and early adopters, so they always understand the first thing that they'll see on Product Hunt isn't going to be the finished product. And I mean, companies like Stripe, Slack, Asana, they launched on Product Hunt way back when, and nobody knew like what that was going to turn into. But they still painted like the bigger vision of what the product was going to be. And nowadays you can look, I think Slack has like 12 launches or more on Product Hunt, and you just see like how the products have been evolving, and that's super exciting for the community to follow along with as well.
So that's actually, I'm glad you brought that up. There seems to be some things that, for one, that are now very important on Product Hunt that maybe didn't exist before, like that idea of you're not launching once, you're launching multiple times. And I think they want you to launch like approximately every 3 to 6 months. There are other things that used to be really important that don't seem important anymore. Like, for example, in the path that eventually led to me finding you, there are a few people that pitched me about the importance of a hunter. And to my understanding, that doesn't actually matter that much anymore. Like, it used to be a hunter distributed. If you got a good hunter, it sent an email to all the people that follow that hunter, but that's not the case. What's in and what's out with the way Product Hunt works today?
Yeah, great question. So just like you mentioned, right? Like, I think, do I need a big hunter is like one of the most searched like search queries on Product Hunt, and also on Google when it comes to like Product Hunt terms in general. So much so that they have it in the FAQs, they have it in the launch pages, like they outline that everywhere on Product Hunt itself, that a big hunter isn't required. That thought comes from like when Product Hunt first started, like 2014, 15, 17. During those times when you had a big hunter, that was super helpful because that ensured that your product is featured instantly on the homepage and all of their followers receive an email notification, like you just pointed out as well. And that was obviously helpful because if you have a hunter that has like 30,000 followers, that's like a massive email blast that helps you get an additional boost. That doesn't happen anymore nowadays. Nowadays, the only thing that happens is like in-app notifications, but adoption rate isn't like super high on mobile app for Product Hunt. So if you have a Product Hunt account and you've had it for like a year or 2 or like maybe even longer, we always recommend you set it up through your own profile. That said, I think when we worked with you as well, Thomas, we've seen like recent changes, like super recent, I'm speaking like last month or last 2 months, is that nowadays having a hunter can be beneficial, not to get additional awareness, but just to have your product featured quicker. So for example, Product Hunt has like 2 tabs. One is the alt section, one is the featured section. If you click on the alt section, there's like hundreds of products every single day. If you click on the featured section, there's a few dozen products every single day. Again, this is a change that came up over the last 2 months, so this might change again. But nowadays, if you have a big hunter, like it'll just put you on the featured section immediately. That's not to say that if you're hunting your own product, you guys don't get featured immediately. But yeah, that's essentially it. So like, if you don't have connections to a big hunter, we always recommend like, hey, don't bother. We can organize a hunter for you if you really want it, and if we see that it's beneficial in that moment. But yeah, that's essentially it. And your other point about
anything else that's like important now or not important now that used to be a key part of your strategy that you don't do anymore, or something that is new and needs to be paid attention to?
Exactly. What you were asking about as well is like relaunching a product hunt, right? So many startups had this like false belief that you can only do a product hunt launch once, and that's because that's what most startups did back in the day. However, Product Hunt actually introduced a new feature called Product Hubs. I think that was last year, Q2. And so they've redesigned the entire Product Hunt experience, where you have like your product hub, which is the home for your company. And if someone comes to that page, they can see like all your iterations of your product from your very first launch to like your most recent feature update. So again, if you check it out for Slack, you see like a dozen different launches or so. And Product Hunt really encourages that because they want to essentially create like a timeline of your company, right? So when did you guys release the very first version of it? How did you iterate upon it? What were the updates that you've shipped since then? And what features have you shipped since then? So we do have like a few clients who we work with either every quarter or like every half a year, depending on how frequently they ship new updates or products in order to introduce them to the Product Hunt community again. And it's actually kind of cool as well because then Product Hunt users can see like how you listen to their feedback and how you implemented it, and then they give you more feedback on like what you think you've done super well and what can be improved even further.
Are you seeing an initial boost given to those companies where, say I was product of the day with my initial launch and now I'm launching a second time? Am I going to be helped to the top of the list to start, like you said with the hunters, or is that not clear yet?
No, but what helps is, so everyone that likes or like upvotes your product on the first launch, they become a follower of your product. And so if you launch again, then as long as they logged into the Product Hunt, they see like a notification that like Not Diamond has just released version 2.0 or has released a new feature, and that can obviously give you like an additional boost because you've invested in the company in the platform previously, and you've built up a follower base just like on any other site.
So with Not Diamond, after it sounds like things went better than anticipated, or they were more impactful outside of Product Hunt than anticipated, have you thought about a second launch? It sounds like you have products that are ready to go for prime time if you wanted to talk about them on Product Hunt. Is that something you've been contemplating at all?
I think not right now. I mean, I feel like just two weeks out from launch, I feel like we're still kind of drinking from the fire hose a bit. But I definitely would imagine launching again in 3 months or 6 months as we have kind of more features or updates that we'd want to push out. And yeah, I think it was like seeing other companies launching these updates, and generally they do pretty well. I think once you have an established user base as well, seeing like, oh, there's like a big launch, big release of new features. Anecdotally, seems like that does pretty well on the platform as well.
Thomas, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear a bit more about like the traffic, the signups, and the conversions that you saw on Product on your launch day and after, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, definitely. Basically, well, it's actually great you ask also just because like this morning, like somebody shared the product on like a forum in China, and like we've got like a huge flood of new users just this morning. But yeah, we've had, several thousand people sign up using the product, pretty strong retention. I think I had a bit of anxiety also about like, is this going to be like a flash and fade? But a lot of them are, daily users, which is pretty awesome. And then also like my email inbox has just gotten like crushed by inbound from investors and companies. And so like, my calendar is just like a wall of meetings, which is great. It's really, really awesome. So like I said, I think Product Hunt was part of this strategy, larger portfolio, but it really ended up being super powerful for us. And a ton of investors who reached out to me said, "Hey, I saw you were number one on Product Hunt. Here's about my firm. I would love to chat." And so I think Leo mentioned that these platforms do have largely, distinct audiences. But I was surprised to see how much overlap there was as well. People who I wouldn't have expected to find us necessarily through one channel like Product Hunt. Just coming over to us. So it's been really, really positive.
Has there been anywhere that you've taken, like, that's incredible hearing what happened with someone sharing you this morning. Has there been anywhere that you've been able to engineer that yourself, or you've taken that credibility from Product Hunt and parlayed that into more growth since the launch?
Yeah, well, I'd say so. We added the badge to our website, which I think helps. But then we also generally have tried to stay active, both like on the kind of discussion and reviews that have been coming in post launch day on Product Hunt, and then in general, we took a strategy across all of our platforms, all of our launch channels, to when somebody was excited about what we were doing, we would share it with the rest, like the whole team, and everyone would go in and like it and repost it or respond to it, just so that person would feel a lot of positive affirmation. So I think generally, I'd say just taking a very, very proactive approach in that sense.
Tell me more about that. Like, when people are excited about it, are you having organic like influencers pop up because they're that in love with what you built? And did you have to seed that with paid influencers first, or was it all organic from the start?
Yeah, have had a number of organic influencers. So like just another, also this morning, like somebody tweeted, like an influencer tweeted about his kind of like thoughts and predictions on AI, and kind of like describing exactly our product in ways like, in the future we'll have a router and it'll be through this like chat UI interface. And a bunch of people like commented and were like, "Oh, you should check out Not Diamond." And he was like, "Oh, I just saw it. Like, it's so great." And then similarly, there was another influencer who had made some videos about like this startup he would love for somebody to go out and build. And then all these people were like, "Oh, you should check out Not Diamond. Like, they actually already built that." And so, yeah, there's been a lot of organic. We've also done like a bit of paid, like, so I had like somebody reach out to me who did like wanted to do a TikTok video in Vietnam. And I was like, "Yeah, sure. That sounds great." Had another ML engineer who just posted a tutorial today after reaching out. And I think like these like collaborations with influencers are really accessible and super helpful. When we've talked about them, I've just said like, just make content about what you like about it. Like, I don't want to script it for you or anything like that. Like, I just trust you to share what you're excited about. And that's generally gone pretty well.
Cool. That's awesome. That's incredible that it's paying dividends now.
Elliot.
So we've experimented with paid influencers. We've had some organic influence as well. We've been in private beta, so obviously it's all relatively quiet. But to your point, like when it's someone who genuinely uses the product versus us going out and say like, "Oh, this person has the audience that we want. Can we get them to talk about the product?" When it's somebody who genuinely uses the product, it's just so much more impactful. And similar to what you're describing, I'm hoping that Leo's able to get us that top spot, and it gives us that credibility that gets it so those influencers are interested in trying us, and then we can grow in that sort of way where it's, I think one of the things that's similar about our businesses is that it's a single player tool that's relatively easy to adopt. And if you're able to nail this product hunt launch and get these early adopters, they get excited and they want to share it. And I don't know about you, I was a product hunt launch user, product hunt user myself outside of this. So it just makes sense for this audience. Like I hope that they nerd out on GC the way that I nerd out on the other products that I interact with on Product Hunt. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It's certainly learned so much from Leo and the tactics that he uses that are going to be so much more efficient. And like you said, you and I could have tried to do this and it would have taken countless hours and we maybe would have been successful, where Leo's just kind of a machine. What I'd love to do with the few minutes that we have left. What I'd love to do with the few minutes that we have left is kind of jump into kind of rapid fire round. I want to hear from Leo and then follow with Tomás on tactics that you use that made this so successful. So let's start with pre-launch. Leo, what are the, call it, top 3 things that a company should be doing pre-launch to be successful on Product Hunt?
Yeah. So the first thing that Thomas already mentioned is you want to make sure that you get your assets in order and that you really nail your messaging, and ideally test that and verify that with like a few users going through it and making sure that you as the founder, like you're doing like this like product work all day, every day. And sometimes you're like, well, the value proposition of my product is so clear, obviously everyone should understand, but you want to have tested and verified this with like a few other users that they also look at this and they're like, okay, I get it instantly and fall in love with it. That's the first thing. Second thing, you want to make sure to like warm up your audience if you have one as much as possible. If not, then that's essentially what we do. Like you want to build up your audience. So for Thomas, like he's been doing this by like posting on Twitter, posting on LinkedIn, posting in Hacker News, like warming up all of his like personal connections via email. And that's super helpful. And if you don't have like a network, then essentially what we do is we try to create one for you. What we try to do is we've learned from our experience in the past where we've built lookalike audiences, if you're familiar with the term. So let's say if you run Google Ads, you try to find like 1,000 customers that have paid for your product already. You upload them to Google and you're like, hey, we want to have another 100,000 more of those. We try to recreate that on Product Hunt. So we'll try to find your competitors or any products that are similar, adjacent, or related. And then we'll see who's expressed interest in these products. And then we're trying to figure out, okay, what are like these, like what kind of demographics are these folks and where do they hang out? Because developers hang out in different platforms than product managers or product marketers, right? So for example, developers hang out on Hacker News a lot. So you want to make sure that you showcase your launch in these communities and that is relevant for the ACP. And the third thing that you want to do is that on launch day, you really set some time aside. You don't have to do 24 hours like Thomas did, but you want to set some time aside to like be able to engage with the community. So like really in advance to your launch day, clear your calendar, make sure that you have 1 to 2 team members that can jump into the comments and really be helpful and engage with the community. Because the more you do that, the more people are willing to like jump into the discussion and ask questions because they see that there's really engaged founders behind the product.
Awesome. And then, Tomás, anything that you'd add there? Anything that you all did before that was especially impactful, or did Leo hit it all?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. Like really investing in getting the assets right, being super sharp on that, and warming up our own network. In some cases, ask folks to go create accounts and like spend some time on the platform because Product Hunt discounts new accounts. Honestly, though, that was like my mom was like so confused. She couldn't end up figuring out how to upvote it. And so she didn't want to do it wrong. So it was like more useful actually to tap into, the people who are already active on Product Hunt in my community. But yeah, I think those are the main things.
I'm just imagining explaining to my mom how to upvote and having to explain to her how to watch the Loom that I would send her, how to upvote. It'd just be this Russian nesting doll of trying to, sounds confusing. We already talked a ton about, oh no, go for it, Leo.
If you don't mind, I'd love to jump in there real quick and mention something that you should definitely avoid doing, which luckily, well, Thomas hasn't, and hopefully you neither. But we've often worked with startups where like they're so excited about like getting as much exposure for their product as possible. They really want the top spots on Product Hunt, so much so that like they ask their moms, their aunts and uncles and everyone. If you do that in advance to your launch day, just like Thomas did, that's perfect. Like we always recommend you have your personal network, like join Product Hunt at least 2 weeks out. Ideally, though, you only want to focus on those people that are on Product Hunt already, that's what we specialize in, right? Like we try to get your product in front of like tech enthusiasts that are like passionate users of Product Hunt and then also willing to provide support. But if not, like if you're asking like friends, family members, you want to make sure you warm them up in advance, because what you want to avoid doing is having like 1,000 people come on Product Hunt on launch day, creating like new accounts and only voting for your product, because that looks very much like spam behavior and that will get you deranked. So that's something to avoid.
That's a really good call out. Can I ask a follow-up to that? When you say warming up, is this like if my mom opens an account today and that's it, doesn't touch it until we launch, is that fine? Or do we need her like going on and upvoting and commenting?
Exactly that. You want her to engage with the platform, because otherwise it's just like you create an account once and then that account isn't being used until like 2, 3, or like even a month later, right? That's essentially empty engagement, and Product Hunt discounts these votes, like Thomas already mentioned. So you can actually see on Product Hunt, like there's engagement graphs, and like every day Product Hunt removes upvotes from all products in certain intervals. And depending on how much new user engagement you have, like those drops will even they will be quite significant, or they'll be just more shallow, right? So you want to make sure that like if your mom comes to Product Hunt, she engages every day before you guys launch, so that it's essentially like a very engaged and valuable user.
Okay, I guess my mom's my next call as soon as we finish recording the episode. We've covered launch day quite a bit. Let's talk about post-launch. What should companies do post-launch to keep momentum going as much as possible? Is there anything that you've seen, Leo, that's especially impactful?
So again, I have to say, like Thomas kind of like hit it out of the park, because they had a ton of investor inbounds. That can happen, like it did with Thomas, but we don't see that is like the norm. So we always recommend being proactive about the launch day success and essentially reaching out to like either investors or influencers or bloggers in your field and leveraging your product on launch day success as like social proof and credibility to get additional features. So yeah, we always recommend being proactive and piggybacking on the launch day success, rather than just like waiting for people to email you. I'm super happy to hear that happened to Thomas. But yeah, it's not the norm necessarily. So we always recommend like, hey, be proactive about your success and like ping it in all networks, and also like all the networks that you've used to get awareness throughout your launch day. So whether that's LinkedIn or Twitter or anything else. Also say thanks to all the users that have engaged with you and say like, hey, like this is the ranking that we've achieved. We've gotten so much interest in our product and valuable feedback. Really appreciate all of you guys like showing support for our launch.
Awesome. Well, guys, this has been an incredible conversation. I feel like I've learned so much that I'm going to be using when we go ahead and launch. Tomás, thank you for being so open and sharing your experience with Not Diamond's launch, and congratulations on how awesome that went. Leo, thank you for helping me. And I'm so excited for General Collaboration's launch next week. Guys, parting thought, would love to also know like where can people follow along, anywhere, social media, et cetera. What's the best place to keep up with you, Tomás?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at TOMAS_HK. And you can try out our chatbot at notdiamond.ai. And yeah, would love to hear from you. You can email me as well if that's easier, t5@notdiamond.ai.
Awesome. Now, Leo, I know you notoriously do not do social media. Where can people follow along with you? Where can people get in touch if they need you in their corner, like Tomás and I needed you in our corner?
Yeah, best way to get in touch with us is just going to our website, which is socialgrowthlabs.co, checking out some of our like free resources, and if it's relevant, just booking a call with our team.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, guys. This was an incredible conversation, and I'm excited to see how General Collaboration's launch goes shortly. Thanks. Bye.